David.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everybody. Good morning. My name is Dennis Doyle. Welcome to the Ulster County Transportation Council's March meeting. So we'll do a call to order and roll call.
Sure. I will read down the municipality. If the voting member present could please state their name. Ulster County. That's fine. City of Kingston.
Here. Let's just see.
Keith. And that's Keith. Town
Keith
of,
Phillips. Yes.
I think Leanne is on the line.
thank you. Town of Ulster.
I believe we have the supervisor on the line as well.
Thank you. New York State Department of Transportation. New York State Thruway Authority.
We have Laura Ripley on the line.
Thank you. Town of Hurley. Peter Humphreys. He said he would be here.
I do not see.
That's fine. Town of Esopus. Laura.
Laura Petit, we have on.
Laura. Town of Marlborough. Town of Shawangum.
John Wall.
Village of New Paltz. American.
Not that I see.
Town of Warsing. Town of Kingston. Town of Rochester. Michael. That's fine. We have 8 members. Is it quorum?
Oh, speaking, Mike Baden just joined.
That's 9 members present. An even better quorum. Thank you. I'm just gonna shut the door.
So thank you, everybody. We do have a quorum of the policy committee. On item 2 on the agenda is a call for citizens' comments. Any citizens' comments?
I'm Barbara Budick. I'm a resident on Kings Highway, and I'm also a member of the staff committee in the town of Bergen. I'm just here following the request for a study and see how much interest we can generate. And also, I'm interested now, or as a town, we're interested in the rail with the recent incidents happening in Ohio and whatever, that's becoming a concern in our town also.
Thank you, Barbara. Any citizens' comments from people online?
If anyone on the line wants to unmute with a comment, please do so now.
Good morning, everybody. It's Mike Baden. Just letting you know I'm in attendance by Zoom. Apologies for being late.
Thank you, Michael.
See no hands raised and no one unmuting currently.
Okay. Approval of the September 27th and November 22nd, 2022 policy committee transcripts. Why don't we do the September vote first and then we'll do the November vote? So the September minutes, do I have a motion for discussion purposes? Mr. Pine has a motion. Do I have a second? Second. Mr. Balk is a second. Any discussion on the September 27th policy committee meeting transcripts? Hearing none. Any opposed? Any abstentions? So carried. Meeting on the November 22nd, 2022 policy meeting transcript. Do I have a motion for discussion purposes? Mr. Pine, Mr. Balk, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Any opposed? Any abstentions? So carried. Okay. Communications and announcements, Brian?
Sure. Welcome, John. I have several communications and announcements. Most of these, I'm going to mention some new programs that have been announced recently. We will do an email notification to our members with this information. So you have it. We'll do that before the end of the week tomorrow. The first notice, we received a RFI from the Federal Highway Administration, which refers to a request for information, meaning the FHWA is requesting municipalities to respond with information regarding improving road safety for all users on federal aid projects. RFI to gather feedback from states, cities, and local governments on ways to improve upon Complete Streets program. I think it's a great opportunity for municipalities who might have a Complete Streets committee or other interest in the subject. I know the city of Kingston, I forwarded this to them. I'm pretty certain that our Complete Streets Advisory Committee in Kingston will respond. So for your information, that RFI is out there. The next item I have is a new funding solicitation. This is from the New York State Department of Transportation. Our office received on Tuesday or Wednesday a call for project proposals under the federal section 130 grade crossing program. This is the HSIP Railroad Safety program for highway rail grade crossing safety improvements. This is a program that has been utilized for many years now throughout Ulster County to improve specifically railroad crossings where public rights of way cross the railroad right of way, mainly on the West Shore Railroad is where I know they've been used, but they've also been used on the Catskill Mountain Railroad, the UND corridor as well. These are to provide improvements to the road surface and to safety features at the crossing. So it's unusual that we actually received a call for project proposals from the DOT. Sandra, is this a new approach that DOT is using, or?
I'm not
Anything to add?
intimately familiar with that program and how they have selected candidate locations in the past. All of those funds, we have a rail unit in Albany that really administers those funds. I can ask.
It's fine. I just was wondering if you might have anything
Yeah.
more to add.
Unfortunately.
We're in contact with Dan Coots, who
Okay.
Yeah.
submitted this information to us, so we will forward it out to our members as well.
And-
Patrick.
And just on that announcement, discussions we've had with the Federal Rail Administration, FRA, have indicated that some of the communities in the county have been interested in quiet zones. And quiet zone studies are very, very difficult to fund. But the suggestion from FRA was to actually look at what we could do with safety improvements of crossings, which is equivalent to almost getting to a quiet zone and have those safety improvements implemented, and then see quiet zone status after those safety improvements are implemented. Some of those safety improvements, as we know, could be 4-quadrant gates, splitting medians and those things, which lead to the things that you have to do for a quiet zone. So the communities that have been interested in quiet zones may want to think about attacking this with essentially looking at rail safety and then moving for quiet zones later.
So for clarification, did you receive the call for projects from the region? You said from Dan?
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Oh, not from our Albany.
Yeah,
office.
yeah.
Oh, okay, then I'll follow up with, Dan.
Yeah.
on-
Generally, what ends up happening, what we've been told in the past is usually the railroads initiate the safety improvement calls, and then they're programmed at the state level.
Right.
So this
That's
was
my
a
understanding, too.
this was a somewhat unusual. We're glad to see this.
Let's make sure that it's,
And he does mention that the railroad has to be on board. I mean, he does mention that obviously the railroad has to be on
So
board.
there is a process. You submit a packet of information
Yeah.
to us. We're including this abstract. That's just the cover sheet. We will follow up with Dan. If he wants us to forward it to our members, we will, but I did want to make numbers to work.
okay, and let me get further clarification too, or maybe you send it any further?
Sure.
Okay,
Uh,
yeah, we should really be on the same page for this stuff.
Supervisor Quigley, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I can't find the raise my hand function on Zoom, so I'm
It's okay, I
gonna
got
raise
you.
my real hand. To the committee, if the city of Kingston and the town of Ulster have had a quiet zone study performed in 2006 under the auspices of the Transportation Council, if the city and the town were to fund the study, would the Transportation Council endorse the project and make a commitment to assist the city and the town in moving this forward?
I guess the question is what study are you looking to fund?
we're talking about a review of the 2006 and an updating of the 2006 quiet zone study that was completed under the auspices of the Transportation Council.
Sure. I don't see why we wouldn't.
We're going to be engaged with a consultant any day now. The project is underway. We have a scope of work contract approved with WSP. Part of that scope of work
Is to examine them.
involves validation of the 26 study based on new data and new state of practice in railroad safety. I don't see why, I mean, we would have to amend the contract to change the geographic area and the scope of work. I think at this point, since we already have a contractor engaged, why wouldn't we?
So the short answer.
So Brian, if you could provide to me some indication of what this change order would cost,
Sure,
so that I can initiate discussions with the mayor, I'd really appreciate it.
sure. I mean, I don't want to speak on behalf of Dennis, but we would have to look at our, we're on the agenda today. It's a Unified Planning Work Program for 2023. So any additional funds we'd have to amend the program, which has not been passed yet. But we do have significant savings that we can draw from.
The short answer is we'll get you the proposal, Supervisor, and then come back to the council and have that discussion in terms of whether or not we can actually do it with council funds rather than burden the city and the town of Ulster.
Right.
That'll be great. I did, so just so that everyone is aware, we've had conversations with RL Banks, which was the original contractor on this 2006. They have provided a budgetary cost for the analysis of one crossing, which came as a result of a town board meeting last fall, where the neighbors were complaining. So we went out and solicited a budgetary number. And in the conversations that have followed up, they indicated, RL Banks indicated to the town supervisor that there is this federal program there. It will be looking for calls for projects with a submittal of a July deadline, I believe. And the minimum grant levels were $1 million. So even if the town of Ulster wanted to proceed on its own for the one grade crossing, the capital improvements would not meet the threshold for this program.
Yeah, and I looked at that program, and that's one of the reasons that we had the conversation with FRA. And they're not of the opinion that quiet zones are fundable under that program. What they did suggest was what I just mentioned was moving
Yes.
towards the improvement.
And that was explained to me that it
Okay.
was focused on safety
right.
and pedestrian safety,
Yeah.
and that perhaps it could be constructed in a way that the primary delivery was safety improvements, but the secondary benefit would come out to be a quiet zone.
Yeah, that's, but the submittal would be for safety improvements, not for quiet zone. It would be a two-step process.
Right.
Okay, we're hearing you, Supervisor, so we'll take a look at that and have the discussion, and if you could send us RL Bank's proposal. Did they give you a study proposal, or did they give you a cost of an intersection proposal?
I believe it was the cost of the study of the single intersection, and I believe I had already forwarded to that, Dennis,
Okay,
Yeah,
but I will do it again if I haven't.
no, Brian tells me he has it, so that's fine.
you have it too.
Okay.
Brian tells me I have it as well, so.
Okay.
Okay,
All right, thank you. Good
Thank you,
conversation.
Supervisor.
Yep.
Thank you.
Next item that I have is, we've been informing our members that during the 2021 triennial review of the MPOs, there was a corrective action found for Ulster County Transportation Council that our long-range plan fell slightly short of meeting the federal requirements, specifically the financial plan section of the LRTP. Do not meet the requirements that was defined. So we've been working with FHWA and FTA to develop a way forward, and I submitted to them a final proposed methodology to address the corrective action, and they accepted it in February, earlier last month. So, using that methodology, I've begun to prepare the the revised financial plan. And I expect to be able to present it to the UCTC Technical Committee later this month in March. It's relatively straightforward. I look forward to showing you some of that work. And then finally, we received, again, we're still under communications and announcements. We did receive a letter from the New York State Department of Transportation, Mark Tiano, acting regional design engineer, regarding pin 814168, new traffic signal at Route 4455 and Brunswick Road intersection. Mr. Tiano writes to Director Doyle, I'm pleased to inform you that the department has started the design phase on the signal in Gardner, New York. At this time, it's anticipated that the project will begin construction this spring, 2023. I'll circulate this correspondence, all these items to members for their information. And again, we will send any necessary links and packets of information out to members in an email blast in the next several days.
And we appreciate NISDOT's notification to the council and with respect to the Brunswick Road and 4455 signal and looking forward for that coming to fruition in a timely manner as proposed by NISDOT. And I know
a full working signal, am I correct?
yes, and I know that there's ongoing discussions with respect to the things that we have to move from Central Hudson in order to make the intersection viable for a signal. They have to move some stuff on some poles and add some pole height in that location. And I know DPW is now aware of it and working with them on that. So thank you again for that. Any other communications and announcements?
Nope, not at this time.
Any communications and announcements from council members? Does anybody want to mention the Cornell Roads program work?
I'll defer to others.
Okay,
What work are you referring to?
liability questions?
The liability training.
Yeah,
So Cornell Local Roads Program, David Orr is part of that, created a liability program, liability training. And they've traditionally done it for highway officials, but they adapted the training to with an MPO focus as well. To, as frequently when we do work as the MPO, there's the question of whether or not that work constitutes a notice to local officials, and whether or not that potentially opens you up to further liability. And this training really just went over the importance of when you're, performing plans, there's steps in place for actions to be taken, when you do have findings, to limit your liability. And, of course, not doing some work is not, is not an excuse, and it should not be the approach to safety work. You do want to do the safety work. And by having a plan in place, you do limit your liability. And this was just kind of going over some of the key components that you would want to see in that work. It was informative, and I think there's going to be a more extensive training on it at the upcoming NISAMPO conference in Syracuse in May, I believe. So we'll look forward to that and ensure that we're incorporating all of those components into our work.
thanks, Dave.
That reminds me, there's one other announcement. There is as David mentioned, the New York State Association of Metropolitan Planning Organizations is holding its annual conference in May in Syracuse, and the UCTC will be presenting on our resiliency project, along with several other MPOs to talk about their resiliency efforts. So I look forward to preparing that presentation, and hopefully I'll be able to do a dry run here for the council prior or immediately after.
Thank you. Okay. Any other communications or announcements from members?
I might have one more actually. New York State DOT main office, the safety unit had released clear safety. So this is for the location and analysis tools that we have available to us. It used to be the Alice system that we used to use for crash data. They released a viewer, which was the crash data viewer, but now they've released the safety component, which allows for network screening to be performed directly online, and we're looking forward to integrating that into our work, specifically when it comes to the local road safety plan updates. We'll be able to do that a little bit more easily internally rather than relying so heavily on some consultant support going forward.
Thank
So
you, Jay.
looking forward to that tool being used.
So I hesitate to ask one more time, but
Sorry.
is there any other communication announcements from members? Seeing none, we'll move to new business. Item 5 on your agenda. Item A, UCTC Resolution 2023-01, approval of the UCTC State Fiscal Year 2023 Unified Planning Work Program. UPWP, may I have a motion for discussion purposes, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Morrow. Do I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Pyle. I have a motion and a second. Brian, do you have a short presentation or not?
David, if you wouldn't mind, if that's available, thank you. We'll put up the presentation that we presented the draft program at the, it would have been the January meeting of the technical committee. If you could go forward, David, keep going. Our allocation for 2023, and this is the allocation history of the Unified Planning Work Program, we received $509,767 in FHWA PL funds, which require a 15% state soft match and a 5% local match. And then also our FTA allocation for section 5303 FTA planning funds is shown there, the allocation history. We received just over $73,000. And those can be used for transit planning funds and utilize essentially the same match formula. Just a reminder, the Unified Planning Work Program is essentially a full listing and budget of all the activities that council staff will perform in the state fiscal year 23 to 24, April 1st, 2023 to March 31st, 2024. PL funds and 5303 funds can only be used for planning purposes. We cannot use these funds for engineering or construction purposes, and that is by federal regulation. Again, here's our allocation history over the course of the history of the MPO, and we do not typically spend every year all of our available funds. Therefore, we are able to put savings in the bank essentially for future use. Our total dollars available on the FHWA side is $1.3 million, just over $1.3 million at the bottom. And then this is our allocation history and drawdown history of our FTA grants. FTA particularly uses a first in, first out drawdown formula so that we have to spend the oldest grant before we start to spend the newest. And you'll see here, this year we will be closing out the 19 grant, and but we still have 2020, 21, 22, and state fiscal year 23 grants available to us for future programming. A total of $265,000, $509. Thank you. 6 major sections to the UPWP. These are stipulated by the New York State DOT and US DOT. And so all MPOs in New York State at least follow this general outline. Please continue. We always do a call for planning projects every fall. This year we received one proposal from the city of Kingston to conduct a corridor management plan for Albany Avenue and Ulster Avenue. And that actually was a joint proposal from the city of Kingston and the town of Ulster. It was submitted by the city, supported by the town of Ulster. And that project is being included with Unified Planning Work Program. We also received an unofficial proposal from members of the Traffic Safety Board and the town of Saugerties and Woodstock to look at non-motorized connectivity But that project, I think, needs further evaluation and consideration before it's ready, for inclusion. Just a quick project status, as of March 31st, 2023, that should say, sorry, I always get those, dates mixed up when I'm going between state and federal fiscal years. We, this year, have completed the Transportation Infrastructure Resiliency and Vulnerability Assessment Project. I have one invoice left to pay out on that. Nearly all the deliverables have been received on that project, so this project will be closed. We have several projects that are currently under contract. The Kingston Railroad Safety Study, which is what we were discussing previously with Ulster Supervisor, on doing a potentially small amendment to that scope of work to include the town of Ulster. We are engaged with Creighton Manning on the town of Ulster Route 9W mobility study, also called the Corridor Management Plan. This project is very much underway. We have a technical advisory committee scheduled for later in March. We'll be reviewing the existing conditions report. As soon as that is reviewed and revised by our TAC, we'll make it available to the public. And we'll also be rolling out our public involvement process as part of that plan, which will occur during primarily in the spring and into the summer.
Sorry.
Yep. And we also have identified and provided an intent to award a small contract under $20,000 to a firm in the capital area to do redevelopment of the UCTC website. This will put the website and provide full ADA compliance to the website and reorganize all the materials and information on our website. So it's much easier to use by members of the public and by staff. Upcoming, there are two projects that I've identified here that are going to be a priority. There are actually three. One is a coordinated human services public transportation plan. This is a required update. And we'll be looking for consultant assistance to do this project and get it underway this year. We have a project to provide complete streets planning assistance to municipalities throughout Ulster County. We don't have a scope of work prepared for this project, but given the frequency of transportation alternatives, grant solicitations, and other potential federal funding opportunities for complete streets improvements, I would like to make this project a priority and provide that assistance to get shovel-ready projects in municipalities, things like raised intersections, bump outs, improved crosswalks, all the types of facilities that provide improved access to bicycle and pedestrians in our, particularly our urban areas and our activity centers throughout the county should be a priority. So I hope to move that project forward. The other project that's not listed here that I expect us to get underway this year is a route optimization study to provide technical assistance to Ulster County Area Transit to look at new types of software that can be used to optimize public transit routing, as well as to provide micro transit or demand response transit services, not just in Kingston, but to provide better optimized routing for the entire transit system in Ulster County. That has been a priority, I think, of UCAT, also the legislature, that we want to move that project forward, and it's fully funded. That would be a consultant assisted project as well. So some other program changes in this year's UPWP, transportation asset planning coordination. We've removed this project due to inactivity. We can certainly add it. This would provide services available to do things like asset management, pavement management, inventories. New York State DOT is doing that information to us, so it's not necessarily needed at this time. Trail intersection safety study. This was proposed about 5 years ago. In that time, Ulster County DPW has essentially upgraded on its own through its own programs. The majority of public road crossings where they meet rail trail crossings, and has done a great job in improving the markings and signage both on the trail system and on the public road. warning that a crossing is, upcoming. In EV planning, this has also been removed from the program, for planning for
Pattern for pattern.
patterns for progress, thank you, has been engaged with, counties throughout Mid-Hudson doing its own EV planning to, facilitate, I think, the siting of electric vehicle, charging infrastructure. Other program changes, so new projects, the Ulster Albany Avenue Corridor Management Plan has been added. Regional trail wayfinding has been removed due to inactivity. This project envisioned wayfinding for our regional trails. But OSI, Open Space Institute, has announced a major undertaking. Again, this is a regional undertaking to provide trail planning services and connect fill all the gaps between our regional trail rights of way, which include the O&W, the UND, the Hudson Valley Rail Trail, and even the carriage roads up in Minnewaska State Park. So we look forward to hearing more about that study. And complete streets planning, as I mentioned, this is a study that has been programmed and we increased funding. Long-range transportation plan will need to get underway. Every 5 years, the LRTP needs to be updated. So if we are going to meet the update requirement, which is September 30th, 2024, we better get underway this year. Local road safety planning. This funding has been increased as well. This will provide an update to what we commonly refer to as our crash study, our regional, our Ulster County road safety study. We provided $85,000 to perform an update to this plan. We'd like this update to follow suit with the long-range plan so that we can use that data to inform the long-range transportation plan.
It's more of adding detail than updating, right?
There's two elements to it,
Yeah.
yes. There's, it's an update, but also adding detail so it's in compliance with the new programs included in the bipartisan.
Allows us
law.
to apply for funding.
Exactly. Then finally, pedestrian traffic and pedestrian safety education plan. We've increased our budget here from 5,000 to 25,000. This would support various community-led efforts to provide education and awareness campaigns for pedestrian and bicycle safety. We did provide $5,000, for example, last year for bus wraps on the UCAT system. So we paid for the fabrication of those bus wraps. The full program budget, the best table to look for that is table 1 of the appendix. It shows how all the federal funds and savings are being programmed in this year's UCWP. You'll note that we have an unprogrammed balance in FHWA funds of $276,000. We're going to program 100% of our FTA funds because we have 2 significant studies that we plan to get underway this year. We will likely utilize most, if not all, of those funds. Table 5 follows suit similarly. I included this. We do an annual report that is required by the USDOT of MPOs. Hit the button, David.
Mike Baden has his hand raised. I don't know if you want to do that now. or-
Sure.
The supervisor, Baden, I see.
Yeah, thank you. Brian, I just wanted to check, I didn't see it specifically notated, the Route 4455 project, study that was funded, I think in 2021, that was the town of Rochester and Gardner had requested. Is that still on the list, or has that been unfunded?
No, that is still included in the program. I'm just reviewing it now, supervisor, to see if I can find the page. It's listed on page 24, and it is funded at $65,000.
Great.
I think this project certainly continues to have merit, and I would like to get it underway, but we have to consider where it falls within the priority of other projects.
Yep.
And I would look for input from you and other supervisors in surrounding towns if this regarding the relative priority and urgency of this project. But yeah, it is definitely included.
Sorry, I muted myself. Thank you for that answer. Appreciate
Yeah.
it.
You're welcome. So if you could just hit the button, Dave. If you go to the current Ulster County Transportation Council website, we do list our annual reports, and we have copies of it here. But we're required to give a full accounting of how we draw down our funds on each and every one of these tasks listed in the Unified Planning Work Program, and provide a narrative description of the work that we performed in the preceding year. So if you are ever interested in how we are spending our time and resources, that annual report is very useful, and it details again everything that UCTC staff and our consultants are performing in the preceding year. And we do have copies of that available for the 21-22 planning cycle. This year's reports are not yet available. Go ahead. And then I have included, for everyone's benefit and ease, I know it's a lot of these documents, you have to get used to the overall format, but this is the quick reference of all the tasks that are included in the 2023 program. And it shows the federal, state match, and local match for each task that we've included. This is the master spreadsheet that Dennis and I spend our time on, figuring out how we're going to make this program work. So it's the quick reference for the entire document. So we did have a public comment period for the UPWP. 15-day public comment period is required. We did not receive any official public comments regarding edits. And you can close this presentation. Thanks, David. There are a number of typos that we've identified in the Unified Planning Work Program on page 13. I just noticed today we reference the wrong time period, 22 to 23. That's an error. This is the 23 to 24 program. And also, City of Kingston noted on the projects that they have on page 25. If you look at the top of page 25, the Albany and Ulster Avenue Corridor Management Plan, the table that shows the cost shares has the wrong title. That's a copy and paste error. That should read Albany and Ulster Avenue Corridor Management Plan, not the Ulster County Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Plan. Those are the only edits I have. They're all minor revisions.
So I have a motion and second. Any discussions from council members?
I believe Supervisor Quigley is raising his hand. Let me bring him over.
Did he find us? Did he find the button? You found the button, Supervisor?
I believe you're muted, Supervisor.
I didn't find a button and I'm having problems with the mute button. I have a question. Can I get a clarification on that local contribution on the Ulster Avenue, Albany Avenue study?
There is.
It's just a clarification.
There isn't any. The county, the council's funding essentially is, it's 80% federal and 20% local. The 20% local is made up of 15% that the state uses generally for PL funds, what they call tax. It's tax credits. They use toll credits. I'm sorry, not tax credits. Toll credits from the thruway, and then the county uses its staff time. So there's no local cost.
Right, the local share, as referenced here, refers to the county share.
Yeah.
The only reason I ask is because there was never a discussion point between myself and the mayor on contributions. That's all. Thank you.
I thought you were going to tell us you're happy to make one. That's what I.
I'm always happy to make one when somebody else pays for it.
Any other questions?
I'm happy to have a heat.
No questions or comments? Hearing none. Any opposed? Any abstentions? So carried. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Uh,
My 11th Unified Planning Work Program.
I just want to thank the staff, Brian and David for this. You do not realize how much effort goes into these, and in particular when we start changing things around and all of the numbers changes and all the tables changes, and Brian starts screaming at me. So you have no idea about the amount of effort. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Yeah.
So, but thank you, Brian.
Better
you than
me.
Item 6 on the agenda, other old business tip administrative modifications, Brian.
Sure, actually, before I get in, I don't have any tip admin modifications to notify folks about, but certainly, as those occur, we'll let you know. I do have one item that's not listed here. Ulster County Transportation Council, well, all transportation councils statewide for the first time have received an allocation, from a new federal aid program called the Carbon Reduction Program. So we received an allocation for federal fiscal years 23 through 27, each year of $197,780. And so the 5-year total is just under $1 million. When you look at federal aid and how that can be applied, it's not a significant amount of money for a new construction project, like a road or a traffic signal or something like that. But it's not insignificant either. So the funding, once the state is required to prepare a carbon reduction plan. That plan is underway. Once that plan is complete, these funds need to be utilized in accordance with the plan. But until the plan is written, we are able to utilize the funds any way we please, as long as it meets the federal requirements. So we're in reviewing the federal requirements, the type of eligible projects that these funds can be used for include public transportation, a transportation alternative as defined by the Moving Ahead for Progress Act, but that essentially includes construction plan and design of on-road and off-road trail facilities for pedestrians, bicyclists, and other non-motorized forms of transportation. Advanced transportation and congestion management technologies, intelligent transportation systems. These are largely motorist information systems or coordinated traffic signals. Street lighting and traffic control devices. Environmental and community impacts of freight movement. Those are technologies that would reduce those impacts of freight movement. Deployment of alternative fuel vehicles, projects to improve traffic flow under the CMAQ program, that's the Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Program, and any other eligible STBG, that's the State STBG, Surface Transportation Block Grant eligible projects. Quite a few projects that are eligible for these funds. So what I'm proposing to do is I'm going to submit a letter to all of our council members, informing them of the available funds, the eligible projects, and I would like to ask them to provide me with ideas regarding projects that they might like to proceed with, either locally or at the county or regional level. These funds can also be used to match existing federal aid projects. So I would say to our members who have particularly transportation alternative projects, meaning trail or sidewalk projects or other projects that are currently underway that are not sufficiently funded for construction, we could use these funds to match or to fulfill any funding gaps that might exist. And in discussions internally, that may be our preference. I know that's been the preference of other NPOs in the region, that they're just going to use these funds to fill gaps in existing projects. So I will get that correspondence
So
out.
it'll be a notice of funding availability going
Yes,
out.
I will be submitting that before our next technical committee meeting. I selected officials and the other technical committee members will receive that.
I think when we first reached out to you about this, didn't the state only make the first 2.5 years of funding available to the NPOs, not the full 5?
That's
So how
true,
much
thank
are,
you.
okay,
So and I'll make that clarification. So
Somewhere around 500,000.
So-
okay, all right.
exactly.
Wanted to make sure
The
we
first 2 years would be, we are able to spend it essentially as long as it meets the eligible project criteria. But then after that, it needs to follow suit with the state plan. Yeah. I would expect most of the projects project categories I just listed off would probably still meet with the state. We have to wait and see. Thank you. for the clarification.
Any questions with respect to that? Okay, Brian, other announcements?
Yeah,
Bridge
sure.
New York?
The Bridge New York, there was a local committee, that was formed and included, David and myself. David was spearheading that. Who else was on the committee, Dave?
We had Amy McKenzie,
Of course,
and then
and I thought-
who was doing
Andrew Emmerich.
Yeah.
Town of Ulster.
Frank
Highway Supervisor,
Petrina.
Frank Petronelli.
Yeah.
I believe that was.
Then there's some additional nice staff.
Technical
Yes. Yes.
So we reviewed those project proposals. There were 4 bridges submitted from Ulster County sponsors. And we're able to recommend 2 projects. I'm not gonna say what those are at this point. Those recommendations then go to central office in Albany. They go to the region, and then the region already asked us for concurrence, and then they get sent up to the central office in Albany for final review and hopefully final approval. But we would hope to be able to fund 2 bridges during this talk.
Thanks,
Uh,
Brian.
I already said during the Unified Plan Work Program presentation, the annual report in 2021 is available for your review. LRTP corrective action, I've already discussed. The Traffic Safety Board meets monthly, first Monday of the month. Presently, we're scheduled to meet March 6th. That meeting date is tentative. I did send out a notice to members. There are several conflicts on the calendar. So we may cancel that meeting, but you can just check on the Traffic Safety Board page of the Ulster County Government website. The meeting notification will be up there, and the agenda if we're having it on Monday. That's all I have. We do have a number of important items scheduled for discussion at the next meeting in March 28th. So we'll have resolutions for review.
And those are, some of those are transit related, am I correct?
One is performance management related. The other,
We should have a transit related resolution,
what's the transit related resolution?
unallocated fund balance.
Yes, thank you. TMA unallocated fund balance will be
Yeah.
required to review. Thank you.
So before we adjourn, any additional member comments?
Seeing nothing from the line.
Hearing none, any public comments? Okay, I don't need a motion to adjourn. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank everybody. Enjoy spring.
Not here yet.
Close.
And we have heat.
The last-
Feels nice.
the
Thanks, John.
last-